So the question is, can we have a common ground understanding as Christians of human agency? Hi, welcome to Reframing the Questions. Today I'm thinking about the word agency, human agency, and how we think about that word in Christianity in general, but also specifically in the abortion conversation, and how that can be associated with one political side over the other. But is that really a uniquely Christian way of looking at it? So the question is, can we have a common ground understanding as Christians of human agency? So, where this is coming from me is that I wrote a book, and in the book, I mentioned the word agency 3 times. The first is by me. I say directly, for Christians, this can feel hard at times when a woman's agency seems to be at odds with a child's life, something like that. But then I'm going on to explain why those two things don't have to be in conflict, right? So, I'm acknowledging people can feel that way, but in reality, it doesn't have to be that way as I lay out the equal value, equal dignity, actually, all the other pieces of the framework. The second place it's in the book is a psychologist who's talking about human agency regarding her clients in all areas. And she does specifically mention unintended pregnancy because she does see people who are navigating that. The third is another guest essay about the agency of Mary, that the angel waited until she said yes to being pregnant before just deciding for her, and how important that was because the Roman gods or other gods people were worshiping at the times, there was records of them raping women. Like that was what people thought about those gods. And it was important that our God, the Father, let it be known that that is not what he's like. And so Mary's agency, her consent was seen and important. So I look at those 3 mentions as not explosive or divisive in the abortion conversation. So I don't know what your thought is. If you have ever been in a conversation and that word agency came up, did that feel to you that that automatically signaled, a position of pro-choice, or actually a position of saying, you know, I think abortion is fine? It's interesting because I don't know exactly what people think when they hear a Christian wrestling with stuff. Like, we tend to have these very extreme views. I guess that's part of the problem. We tend to have these extreme stereotyped views of how extreme the views are. So I guess if the word agency comes out, people can assume, whoa, that person's like really, really pro-choice. And let's think of a different word. Life. Sometimes if we hear the word life come out, other people can think, oh, that person's really, really, pro-life. Here's the thing, that's what's so hard about this conversation is life is true and good and from God. Agency is true and good and from God. So, again, as much as I try to avoid, and we talk about avoiding political tropes, obvious political tropes, there are going to be times where we use words that are misunderstood. And so I was misunderstood. I've been misunderstood using this word as if I do not value children before they're born. Like, that is literally the conclusion that another Christian came to. So it is good to avoid those words. If we're in a conversation, this wasn't a conversation, so I was not able to say anything, but it has me thinking about if it comes up in conversation. If it comes up in conversation, I do think a way to handle this is to say, oh, that's interesting. I said the word agency because we're talking about that today. And I hear you saying you're assigning me now a political status based on that word. Can you tell me more about that? I think just naming it, if I had been in conversation with this person, I could have done that. I could have said, hey, let me ask you this question. But I'm going to be honest right now. I have been agitated that this person thought this. So now I'm even thinking, if I'd had a conversation, this is why I do this YouTube channel, because if I'd had a conversation, I probably would have gotten a bit miffed. Like, what? I can't even use this word, and you're going to think I'm this? Sorry, I'm being honest. So the first thing we have to do then is to be ready in conversations to be misunderstood. And I know I talked about this before when I was talking about a review, but again, it's one thing to be misunderstood on social media or somewhere and then talk about it later, but we're talking about having conversations with someone when I feel misunderstood in a conversation. So I think the first thing, at least on agency, would be, hey, let me understand what you think I was saying with that. And then I think the second thing would be to look at, what does it mean to be human? What did you think I just meant by agency? Another great question. What did you think I meant about agency? Because when I think about being human, how God has created us, He created us with agency. You know, we talked about that example of Mary. I look at Jesus in scripture, He totally put questions out there. He was invitational, very much respected people's agency. Now, I know I got another question about this. This was at an in person event. I didn't quite know what to do with this. The question I got was, well, what if we change the conversation from abortion and what does agency look like as Christians to thinking about something happening to an older child? And, just thinking about this, like, let's talk about that. Someone has agency. We have agency to harm other people. Now, we create laws against it. Of course, we prosecute it. We stand up against it. That doesn't mean we're removing it. And the reason I think this is so, so, so important is because in the abortion conversation, when we hear it framed, we hear agency framed, a lot of times it's framed as selfish or irresponsible. Uh, but agency is not um, morally charged. Like, it's not right or wrong. It just is. We have it. So that would be one place, I think, if we could take that word out of politics and just, we have agency. God has granted us that. The question is, what do we do if we think human agency is hurting other humans? Yes, we put laws there. Even the laws can't fully protect us. So how does God handle human agency? Well, God looks at our heart, right? He has the law early on, but our framework principle about grace is that grace and truth come through Jesus. That's opposite of the law. And so the law was guardrails to keep people from hurting themselves and other people. The way of Jesus is this relationship, this grace, encountering Him, where we are so loved by someone, our Creator, that of course we want to then treat ourselves better, treat others better. That's why He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, love your neighbors yourself. All the law hangs on this. Like, when we are loved, and then we choose love, our agency then is in service of love and doing things that help other people. I think what gets so misunderstood in the abortion conversation is that, you know, agency is either the pinnacle of what one side's looking for or the problem of what another side's looking for. Really, women don't have agency if they feel they have no other choice for abortion. That's actually another interesting commonplace thing for believers. Like, agency means I am free to choose. But we know from research that so many times women and their partners and their family members don't feel they have a choice. They actually feel robbed of their agency when they have nothing else they can do. And so that's just, again, an expansion of the word. Are we being a community where people can live the life that they want to live in creating families and caring for each other? Are we making it so hard to have a child that we're actually not providing agency? I guess here's another common ground Christians can agree on agency. It doesn't n- Neither passing a law against abortion nor passing a law for abortion truly addresses human agency in this conversation. That's the point. It's bigger than that. And so for Christians, I guess it really goes back to the equal value, equal dignity. Part of having dignity as a human is having agency. And it means that we value every person equally before God. We know that God knows how to interact with people and lead us into a life of flourishing for ourselves and others. We trust Him with that. We don't take upon ourselves responsibility for someone else's agency. we don't do that. I'm saying this because I have struggled in my past because my legalistic upbringing, even things the way I parented my kids, sometimes I was afraid of their agency. And God has just been showing me how that is not how he is. So I don't know if I fully answered the question of can we have common ground around agency, but it is something to think about. And we can have some other conversations about other words that we can have common ground even on these words. Take the words themselves, like agency, out of the political sphere. Let's not have it represent one political side. And what a great conversation for us to be having as believers, as what do we agree on about agency? What does God say? And how can we be there for each other? So I hope that me unpacking this has helped you, and I look forward to seeing you next time.